Welcome to the Movies of the Damned podcast. My name is Kyle Grant, and I'm sitting here, as always, with my friend and published horror author, John Hunt. If you enjoy what you hear here today, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our Facebook page, and follow us on both Instagram and Twitter, @DamnedMovies. Email us any questions, comments, and suggestions to moviesthedamned@gmail.com. For further details on John's published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Today, we'll be discussing Stanley Kubrick's 1980 psychological horror, The Shining. The film follows Jack Torrance and his family as they embark on taking care of the isolated historic Overlook Hotel in the Colorado Rockies over the winter. Jack's mental health soon begins to deteriorate through alcoholism and visions of ghosts, turning him against his family. Ultimately, though, his wife and son survive as he becomes lost in a hedge maze and freezes to death before he can kill them. John, before we get your opening thoughts on the movie, just to remind everyone, this is a big episode for us, episode number 100, which is pretty wild. We're in the triple digits now, but here we go. John, opening thoughts on the movie?
Okay, yeah. So this is one of those films that, over the years, it's culturally iconic. There's scenes from this film or parodies of this film have made it into The Simpsons, into so many different other pop culture references going on. Like, it's just one of those films that's, you cannot discount its influence or its impact on social on I guess pulp culture itself, really. The interesting part about this film is that every time I see it, every once in a while I'll Google, top rated horror movies of all time or the scariest horror movies of all time. This movie always seems to show up in one of those lists. And I was always like, okay, it's a good movie, but is it the scariest movie of all time? Should it be up there? And I was always a hard no, because I was never ever scared of this film. There have been some films over the years where it was hard for me to go to sleep afterwards, and I'd be tempted to turn the light on, just because of how scared the movie left echoes in me. This was never one of those films, but so yesterday I watched it again for the podcast, and my daughters and Louise were interested in watching it with me because they've been watching a lot of Stephen King lately, like It. They really loved the new It's, and Ella read Misery, and she just watched the movie Misery. So they're into Stephen King, and I said, I'm watching this one for the podcast if you'd like to watch it. And they watched it with me. Now, it's an older movie, and they're younger, so I was really interested in what they thought of it. And what they thought of it was really slow. And the ending, you could see that near the ending with the climax and the suspense building, it scared them. Like they were, they're like, oh my God. And they were doing all that type of stuff that was in it. But they said for the most part, it was slow. For me, though, I love this film. I love it. Love it. Is it the scariest film of all time? Hell no. But is it a great film? Well shot, well acted? Absolutely. And I know I unpacked a lot there, Kyle. So what do you have to say in response to that? I just find it interesting that the younger generation, well, I don't want to generalize, but younger people that watched it with me found this movie very slow compared to contemporary movies.
Oh, well, first of all, I understand why it's on all these lists, these top 5 lists, these top 10 lists. Even if people want to say it's the greatest horror movie of all time, I get it because it's such a great overall movie, and it just so happens to be in the horror genre. So like number one, it's just a great movie overall, and so that's why I think it gets to the top of these lists. And I think you hit the nail on the head. This movie isn't going to scare you to death, but again, I just have to lean on the fact that it was a very solid film, and I enjoyed watching it through again. Uh, does it have some slow ports? Of course, but I think that might have to do more so with the fact that it was made 40 years ago, and just movies were a little bit different back then. So it's not gonna live up to some of the movies that you see coming out in 2020 that have a jump scare every other minute or things like that. But the build in this movie is fantastic. This might not be my favorite horror movie of all time, but it might be my favorite performance by an actor in a horror movie. Jack Nicholson hits this out of the park, and I can't say enough good things about his performance. He was amazing throughout.
That's what I said. Like, so I said, I did say I love this film. Like, I love it. I love so much about this film. Um, I would say it's such a good film that I don't even think it. It's just not, which is probably which makes it such a standout. It's just not a typical horror. Like, it isn't. It doesn't have like, just even look at the casting and the directing. Like, Stanley Kubrick at that time was a huge director, right? Like, you know, he's done The
Yeah.
Clockwork Orange. He's done like so many big films that critics love, right? And he wrote the screenplay for this and all that type of stuff as well, right? So, and then you have an actor like Jack Nicholson saying, "Yeah, I'll act in that." Like, this guy, he was a megastar. He's never not been a megastar. I think there was one film that he did with Vincent Price a really long time ago, and he looked like a kid. Where before anyone knew who he was. That's the only time I've known Jack Nicholson not to be in a movie that wasn't lauded or paraded as something exemplar. And then you have like Shelley Duvall. Like, she wasn't really a megastar at the time, but people knew her, and you know, they, it's just for those things itself. It's not really what you'd see in a typical horror, right? You get the cast that nobody knows, and
Yeah.
you get a masked killer chasing after someone with a woman heroine surviving at the end, right? Always. So this one also had that, but also had the child survive as well, right? But um, it's just I don't even know. It's like it's even hard to even put it in the realm of those other horror films. It's definitely a horror movie, but it's like it seems to be like such a standout. But I would say
And I,
for
I I think you're saying it right there, John. Like it is just a great overall movie that happens to be a horror.
hmm
It's not typical. You're right, and that's okay.
yeah, for
It
sure.
doesn't have to be a typical one. It can just be a really good overall movie that has one of the greatest directors of all time, one of the greatest lead actors of all time, and obviously that combination there is going to put it heads and tails above the rest just right away.
Yeah, so I would agree with that. In the sense that it's a great horror movie. It should make one of those lists, but I don't think it should make a scariest movie list.
No, if you're gonna like what's a movie that scares you the most, The Shining probably isn't gonna be there. It doesn't have all those jump scares in it.
Well, it's not even the jump scares really. Like, it's there were moments in that film where I was like, "Oh, like, you mean you get that little tingle where it's like, "Oh, that's creepy. There's something really here." And
Especially with the music, right? The
uh,
music really does it.
well, the music and some of the scenes, like near the end, I thought the most powerful stuff happened at the end. So when Shelley Duvall was like trying to make her way out of the Overlook after she'd sent Danny out, and after Nick Halloran had been killed, and she kept seeing like the ghosts were getting more powerful because um, they're just revealing themselves more near the end because they thought Jack was going to come out on top, right?
Yeah.
So they started to reveal themselves to her, and the scene with the guy who had that, like, the gash down his head and raising a drink to her, like, just some of those scenes were like really creepy and really really iconic, and but so you get a little tinkle of something there, but nothing that would fall, like I said, nothing that would follow me into the night, where I'd be like getting up and checking my closet and stuff like that. And I have done that with other movies when I was younger, right? Like,
Oh, seriously?
yeah, like when I was a teenager, like my imagination got a little crazy, right? So I can remember one time, and this is gonna sound so silly, but we went away to a family cottage, like so it's like my family and my aunts and uncles, like we all rented like one of those little houses that you can get,
Okay.
and like near the water. And this was like I was in my Friday the 13th phase, and it was like Jason when he wears that potato sack part two, where
Mhm.
he doesn't have the hockey mask. Yes, it's the first appearance of Jason, and he's wearing that potato sack with the eye hole in it. That's his
Okay.
mask, right? This is before the hockey mask, and
Okay.
my cousin, and I'm watching him do it. I'm watching him do it. My cousin takes the pillowcase and he puts it on his head, and he starts to chase after me. And I was like, "Oh, this is Jason!" And I was so terrified, man. Like that's some of those films did that to me, right? So, um, this one never got there, and I watched it lots of times when I was younger. But it does get you in a different way. Like my daughters found this slow, and Louise found this slow. I at no point found this slow. This is up there with I'm watching it and I'm fascinated the entire time. Watching Jack Nicholson do his thing. Shelley Duvall did a great job. That little boy who played Danny did a great job.
He
There's
was a fantastic child actor. Like it,
holy
it,
cow, so
it did
good.
give me the chills when when I guess he was taken over. Remember
Mhm.
that?
Mhm.
And he turns to Shelley Duvall at one point and he says, "Danny's not here, Mrs. Torrance."
Yeah, I
That
know.
gave me the chills. And just like for such a young man to be able to act that good, I was like, "Oh my gosh, wow."
He did like that's what I mean. Like this, for me, I was never ever bored, and and I guess maybe it's and even when I was younger, I was never bored with this film, never. So I don't know what it was about this film that did that for me, because like I can't say that for all of Stanley Kubrick's films, right? Like Clockwork Orange, great movie to watch. What was it, Hamburger Hill, great movie to watch. 2001, obviously. I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of Eyes Wide Shut, but whatever, right? So it's just there's some films that but this one, like the moment, the aerial view following the car up to the Overlook, I was hooked. I'm not going anywhere. I'm enthralled. I thought it was so well shot, so well acted. I love this film, but
And
the
and
only
you,
thing.
and you, you said
Sorry.
it all right there. Sorry, John, you said it all right
Yeah.
there. Like, of course you weren't bored because this was just like as we keep saying a good overall movie, and you're not going to be bored in that type of movie. And I wasn't bored either, but I do have a couple issues, a couple criticisms.
God damn. I forgot we're gonna do that. I don't know why I forgot, because we always do that. But I don't have any criticisms of this movie. But you go ahead.
I have two.
Go.
Criticism number one. The scene where I guess Shelley Duvall confronts Jack Nicholson, sees the writing on the typewriter.
Mm-hmm.
She grabs the bat,
Mm-hmm.
and it's as if Shelley Duvall has never touched a baseball bat in her life.
Yep.
She's not swinging this like a baseball bat. She's basically just like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's the type of thing where like if you swung a bat like that at a window, the window wouldn't crack, you wouldn't break the window, like you couldn't break through a piece of paper with how hard with the way she was swinging it, but yet she's able to knock out Jack Nicholson with it.
Well, there's a lot of things going on there, right? So let's go back to the character development, right? So you have this is a perfect confluence of characters for this entire movie to take place, or for everything that happened, right? You have uh, Wendy, who knows her even from before her marriage is kind of in trouble.
Yeah.
She's really kind of in trouble, and back in that day, people really didn't get divorced. It wasn't like it was an odd thing, right? And it was almost considered a failure on both parts if that's kind of what happened. And you could see her maneuvering around Jack to kind of keep the peace and always try to be the one to soothe his ego, and to get him to calm down and relax a little more. But at the same time, she was very passive about it, right? She didn't have any real strength. The only time that her strength came out is when she thought uh, either she was in danger or her son was in danger. That's the only time. And her with the baseball bat, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that her character would never have touched one in her life. So, and then she has it with her, and she's just really kind of keeping him away. She doesn't really want to hurt her husband. She doesn't really seem to want to hurt anyone. She just wants him to stay away. So, there's two things that I think going on, and I think they portrayed it very well here. You could see her with the way she's kind of swinging it around. She's not really trying to hit him. She's just trying to keep.
She's like swatting him more than swinging it.
Not even. It's just like, so she's like, like you have your bubble. Don't get in my bubble. She's swinging the bat in to keep him out of her bubble. Like, it's not, you know what I mean? Like, it's not really, it's a defensive thing. It's not an attack thing. She's doing that while she's trying to back away, and you can see she's still trying to talk sense into him. She's talking to him as she's backing up the stairs, saying, please, this is not, you know what I mean? Like, don't do this. This is not how it should be. She's trying to get him to come around. So the whole time she's defensive. So the one time that she does connect is when she's near the top of the stairs. She knows she's running out of rope here. She does connect. He's shocked because he doesn't see this in her, obviously, because he was never afraid of her walking up after her. Not once at all. So and then he falls down the stairs, and the fall down the stairs is also not good for your head. Right?
Yeah, but she doesn't connect hard. Like, I don't think she hits him hard enough so he'd fall down the stairs.
Oh, well, I don't know about that, man. You don't have to get hit hard with a bat for it to hurt, or for you to lose your balance. Like, bats are pretty fucking hard, man. Like, just
I don't know.
Go in the garage right now and take a bat and just like kind of clink it a little against your head. You'll be like, ow. So like,
yeah, I just felt like him getting knocked out wasn't realistic to the way the scenario was going. But everything you're saying is making sense as to why she's being more defensive and trying to talk reason into him.
Well, and it's one of, like, it's hard to gauge the power of a hit when you're watching it on a film. But I don't know, man. And then once again, it's like you don't know it was the bat that knocked him out.
It might have been the fall.
Yeah.
Okay. Point number 2.
Okay.
He never freezes in that maze.
What do you mean?
The ghosts would have let him out of that maze.
You can't predict that stuff. So
what do you mean you can't predict that? The ghosts would not have let their person die out there. They would have helped him get out of there.
Well, I don't even know how you can come to that conclusion. Explain.
Well, the ghosts were helping him the entire time. The ghosts let him out of a locked freezer.
That's the only time that they physically manipulated the environment.
Because they had to, because they knew that he could not do anything if he's not let out of there. Just like they would have known he would have died if he's left in the maze.
So what do you think they could have done in the maze to not have him freeze?
Showing him the way out.
Like what? Just have him follow someone?
Yeah. This way.
So, well, did you see any ghosts outside of the Overlook Hotel?
I never did see ghosts at the Overlook Hotel. Obviously, manipulating him outside as well because they got, or that, I don't even know what to call it, that snow thing.
The snow cat, right? No, he did that. They didn't do that.
Yeah. No, they got him to do that.
Yes. Okay, so the what I'm trying to get to is like they're manipulating him. So this is another thing where reading the book would have been helpful. I did read the book, so
okay.
It's the scariest book I've ever read. It is the second scariest book I've ever read, and those are the only 2 books I've ever read that actually scared me. So,
okay.
But let's go in the context of the movie. Throughout the entire movie, they're trying to manipulate Jack into killing his family, right?
Yes.
You'd agree with that?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that's what they wanted him to do.
Okay, so all they need to do is to put those ideas in his head and manipulate him that way, make them make him think Wendy and Danny are conspiring against him, or they're the reason why his life is so crap, or that he thinks his life is so crap. So they don't need him. They don't. They didn't do the only, like I'm saying, the only physical thing they did was unlock that key from the storeroom door and open it. That's the only time they physically interacted with anyone in this film. And then secondly, you'd never see them outside of the hotel. So maybe their power base is in the hotel. All they do is, it's like when you start up a motor and then you let it go. Jack was their motor, and then they let him go.
Oh, okay.
That's the way I
Hey,
look at it, and I don't
okay.
see, because it would have been different if you saw the ghosts outside the hotel, and then like pointing, this is where he went, or whatever the case may be, right? In the
Yeah.
book, in the book, the spirit of the Overlook was over the entire grounds. Like there was an amazing scene in the book where, um, you have shrub animals.
Yep.
So all along the grounds, there's like lion, shrub animals, all these type of things. And there's really good, great scene. Even thinking about it, it's like so creeping me out. But it's like Jack's walking back into the hotel because he's doing a lot of caretaking work outside as well. And when he looks back, the animals are moving closer to him. But when he watches them, like, you know what I mean? So like he looks at them, they're stationary, they're about 20 feet away. He goes
Yeah,
back
yeah,
to
yeah.
doing work, then he turns back, now they're 15 feet away, right? Like, but he doesn't
Yeah,
see
they're
them
like
move.
slowly creeping up on
Yeah,
them.
and they're
Yeah.
in different positions, right? And they're doing like, so like in the book, they had so much more going on with it. So, and that was another criticism that my daughters had, was like, well, I don't even know what's going on. Like, why is even all this happening? So in the book, it's like the Overlook Hotel has all these spirits and all these deaths in it, and it's like a paranormal battery, right? So they
Yeah.
want Danny because he has the Shining. They need him killed in the hotel because he has the Shining, and that will help uh, make their paranormal battery strong. It will make them more powerful, make them stronger. It'll give them more life. So they're really invested in having Danny brought there by getting Jack hired. Like the way in the book, it was like manipulating all these events to have this family there at this time, just so they can manipulate Jack into killing Danny, so to be able to have his soul and recharge this paranormal battery. So good, the book. And then like they had to keep feeding the main problem in the book was that they had to keep looking after the boiler, because if the boiler wasn't checked on often enough, it could potentially explode. So that was like a huge portion of the book. So a lot of stuff that was in the book obviously didn't make it into the movie, because in this movie, which was already 2.5 hours long, even though it wasn't a big book, it would be a really really long movie trying to get all that in. But
Of course, right? You can never include everything.
yeah, for sure. So that being said, like, it's hard to say what I would think otherwise, right? Because I read the book well before I saw the movie. So I can't say, oh, I'd get understand and get all that without having read the book, because I can't say that, because I've already done the reverse order. But
Yeah, you can't wipe the slate.
I can't, right? I can't say whether or not I would go there. I think though in the movie that they showed enough, they laid enough breadcrumbs, not to show that they just wanted Danny because he's this paranormal battery, but just because during the winter months and the isolation, um, the Overlook Hotel sometimes has its caretakers kill its family.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's what this movie was about, as you said,
Mm-hmm.
them trying to get him to kill his family.
Mm-hmm.
But and then obviously he ends up freezing out there, and that's one scene I didn't love either, is when they showed him frozen. It was supposed to be this big reveal and supposed to be really creepy. It almost came across as like a little comical to me, but maybe that's me looking at it from a 2020 lens.
No, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. But I still, for me, it fit the movie, and I don't really call it a criticism. Like I didn't really is like one of those things where it's like Um, like I maybe his intention. I would say his intention was to make that a creepy scene, but it wasn't creepy for me either. But I did like that scene. I think it was a fit ending because I don't know what else you would do, right? So you just he would have been frozen to death out there for sure. So if you just showed him like going into a fetal position and then freezing like that, it's less dramatic, right? And this is a movie, so you're gonna want a dramatic ending. So I kind of liked what they did with it for that reason
Yeah,
alone.
and then it shows the hotel has kind of absorbed him, and he's in that picture from the
Yeah,
1920s. I thought that was cool.
that was really cool. That was really cool.
But you know who didn't think that was cool?
Who?
Stephen King.
Really? Eh?
This film was really criticized by King for its deviations from the novel, as you just said.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he was actually quoted as saying that this is the only adaptation of his novels that he could remember hating.
Really? That's so
He
interesting.
disliked this so much that he actually wrote a television miniseries that actually was made in 1997 about The Shining. So he wanted to redo it all because he disliked this so much.
Wow.
And I never actually saw the miniseries. Did you?
No.
Apparently, though, it more closely shadows everything that happens in the book.
Well, yeah. If that's what he was aiming to do, you would assume that it would, right?
No, for sure, right? But it was interesting. The sequel that just came out in 2019,
Mm-hmm.
Doctor Sleep,
Yep.
is actually a sequel to the movie. So there's some obviously some changes made in that don't mirror the book Doctor Sleep, so that it can more closely match up with Stanley Kubrick's movie The Shining.
Yes. Well, that's the one that people would more remember, more resonate with, right? Um,
Definitely.
I haven't seen it. I read the book and I wasn't. I don't think, and I love Stephen King. Like he's a monumental talent. I don't think we'll ever see a talent like his again in a long, long time. I don't think The Shining ever needed a sequel.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's a work of art in its own. Critics love this movie, John. 84 on Rotten Tomatoes. Audience score even higher, 93.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure we're both in the 80s, if not in the 90s.
I'm in the
And it was a
90s.
box office success.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know what? I probably am too. I think 93, low 90 is a great score for this one. But again, as I was just saying, box office success, made for 19 million, brought in over 46.
Mm-hmm. Believe
Uh,
it.
lot of interesting tidbits since this is obviously such like an influential popular movie. Like you tend to find out more and more of it because people want to really dig into its past.
Mm-hmm.
One interesting thing, and I always love looking at casting. So some other actors that they were considering for Jack Nicholson's part: Robert De Niro,
Okay.
Robin Williams, and Harrison Ford.
Yeah, Jack's the best. Jack's the
Oh, for
best.
sure he is.
Yeah.
I just again just imagine the movie being made with any of those three.
I think
The
Robert De
fame,
Niro would have been uh, potentially a good pick, considering some. It's like you've seen Taxi Driver, right? So
of course.
he could play someone going off the deep end very well. Uh, I'm not saying that the other ones can't. I'm just saying I've seen him do it. So I think he would have done a pretty good job. But like Jack's Jack, man, that's another interesting thing. Like he's lauded as such an incredible actor, and I'll never disagree with that. But I always feel when I'm watching him that I'm watching Jack Nicholson play Jack Nicholson. Like if you've seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, there's not a lot of difference between how he acted in The Shining and then in that. If you ever seen like even in A Few Good Men when he's like having those speeches on the stand, like this is he's just playing Jack, and as good as it gets, like I you know what I mean? Like I don't know, it's just he has such a huge he has huge charisma. Like I don't even think you can measure this guy's charisma. It's off the charts, and such self confidence that when you watch him, you can't not watch him. He's so good to watch, so interesting to watch. That's what another thing that for me made this movie never slow. And like even that one of the best scenes is right after he killed Dick Halloran, which I like Dick. I didn't want him to die. He was awesome. But like after he kills him, and all you see is like the lobby itself. There's nothing there. It's just a backdrop of the lobby, and then his Jack Nicholson's head slowly pops up from the bottom of the screen, he looked so goddamn evil, man. I was like, this is such a good shot, and Jack's face looks amazing. Like, it's so good. But to, in my opinion, anyways, like, he always plays Jack. Like, I don't see much difference from the Joker, the Batman Joker that he played, to what he did in this movie. You know what I mean? That's just my opinion.
Yeah. And he is a unique character in himself, right? And I guess that's how he keeps getting so many roles because he plays this kind of perfect, like psychotic character so well. Like it's almost like he always has a little bit of crazy in him when he's doing these roles, and it just comes across so well on screen.
For sure. And like for me, it's just he's just amazing to watch. It's just fun to watch. Just fun to watch. Just his facial animations, his movements, like the tone of his voice, like the cadence of his words. Like he's just really fun to watch, man.
And John, he was the one who came up with the "Here's Johnny" line.
Yeah,
He improvised it.
I believe it. But here's another thing. So, um, my kids knew about that, right? They saw the twins. They go, oh, it's from this movie, and then they saw Danny riding around this on the little scooter on the hallway, and they're like, oh, that's from this movie. Like, there's so many things that they've seen but didn't know it was from this movie. And then they
That's
were,
how influential it is.
yeah, I know, right? And then they're talking about like, what's that? What is that? And then the Here's Johnny part, they go, oh my God, that's from this movie? And we go, yeah. I go, do you know what that's from? And they're like, no. And I go, oh, it's from a late night TV show. They had no idea what it was in
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
reference to, right? So it's kind of funny to see the generational gaps in pop culture reference that way, right? Like it's just something that I take for granted. Like I think everyone knows Pearl Jam and Nirvana, um, and but some people just never heard of them, right? It's just like it's just some of the stuff that you take for granted, right?
No, no, you're absolutely right. And there's a lot of hidden things in this movie. And so, if we just get into the conspiracy theorists quickly, and I kind of
Let's
mentioned
do
this a
it.
little bit to you off air, but there's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there who believe that Stanley Kubrick filmed the moon landing. So this would be people who don't believe that we went to the moon and
Hmm.
that Stanley Kubrick directed and filmed all of it. And they claim that there's clues in this movie where he's trying to let people know that he filmed it. And so a couple small clues that people say, which I think might be a bit of a stretch, but the haunted room, room 237.
Hmm.
So that number's changed from the book. In the book, it was 217,
Hmm.
but in the movie, it's 237. And people claim he changed it to that number because I guess 237 is the million of miles that the moon and the Earth are separated at like the mean distance or something like that.
Yeah, so I think it's 375,000 kilometers. So I don't know what that is in miles, but
Yeah,
um,
so it's something like that. But then when you look into it more, the inn where this was filmed, they didn't want it to be room 217 because they were worried that no one would want to stay there anymore.
oh,
And there was no room 237, so they just made up that number. But the interesting tidbit with room 217 is their most requested room now because of the movie.
that is pretty funny. That's funny.
Yeah, so it's kind of the reverse. And then other things, at one point you see Danny, he has a sweater on that says Apollo on it.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. Yeah, that's a great sweater.
So yeah, so they're just trying to make little links like that throughout. And it's just people will always find ways to make clues fit their narrative, if you know what I'm
Oh,
saying.
for sure. It's like what is that confirmation bias? We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
It's just something that people do. It's kind of fun. There's no harm in it, right? I'm always like that would be a worldwide conspiracy. Like it would
Oh
be,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like you don't think the Russians at the time would have like loved to prove that the Americans made that up, right?
Of
Like,
course they would.
and they'd even love to prove it now, right? So
Yeah,
it's one
yeah.
of those ones where it's like okay, but it's like it's pretty interesting that way. But you know what I heard?
But
I
it's
heard
fun. It's fun, right?
definitely it's a lot of fun. Like I said, like it's a lot of fun. There's no harm in it. Like who cares, right? But yeah, I was thinking, well, no, my daughter's mentioned this to me, and I was wondering if you dug it up in your little research. Like, apparently Stanley Kubrick um was did some techniques to keep Shelley Duvall very scared during filming. Have you read anything about that?
Yeah, so apparently he was like unbelievably hard on her during the filming. Um, like constantly yelling at her, making it very, very stressful, changing the script all the time. Apparently she became so overwhelmed by the stress that she became physically ill, started actually losing hair.
Oh my
Um,
God.
Nicholson became so frustrated that he refused to memorize his lines anymore because he knew the scripts were just going to change. So he would just try and memorize his lines right before he shot.
Oh
And
my God.
apparently, Kubrick would have these unbelievably long days of filming and make them like do reshoot after reshoot after reshoot after reshoot. And my interpretation is he was doing this on purpose to just like make Shelley Duvall look so worn down as she would have been so worn down being cooped up in that hotel for so long.
Hmm. I still think that's a little excessive, if
Of
that's the
course it
case.
is.
Well, not a little, a lot excessive. I guess
Yeah,
you can't be a little excessive. That's an oxymoron.
if you're
But
doing
yeah,
something to someone that's causing them to lose their hair, you're going overboard.
yeah, you hired them as an actor to portray a certain thing, right? Let them do it. Don't don't do things to them, right? That's detrimental to their health. But that's just my opinion.
Well, you know what? It's hard to argue with the end product, but I agree with you.
Hmm. I'm sure, like, don't if you don't think she could do it, then don't hire her, right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Well, buddy, anything else to add on episode 100?
No, it's I all I can say is I love this movie. I love this movie. If it's not the scariest movie, it should not be on the scariest movie list. I'm sorry, and neither should The Exorcist. I'm sorry. That's just my opinion. They're not, but that once again, um, that type of thing is subjective, anyways, right? So my not scary could be your terrifying, and your terrifying could be my not scary. So either or, I can't really say that it shouldn't be on a list. But for me personally, they wouldn't be on my list for scariest movie.
And you know what? I've never sat down and really put my like top horror movie list together. I would say that this is a thumbs way up just as a movie overall.
For sure.
And it happens to be a horror movie.
For sure. I'm in the nine. I'm in like 95, 97 for this film.
Yeah. You know what? How could you not be up there? Again, very good movie, and I think Jack Nicholson. It might be the best performance ever by an actor in a horror movie. I will say that.
Oh, for sure, for sure, absolutely. He nailed it.
Well, you know what? The Shining kind of ends our first 100 movies, but you know what? Why stop now, John? So we might as well let everyone know what we're going to be talking about next week for the first movie of our second 100.
Let's do it.
Um, we're going to be going with a recommendation that came in. Friend of the podcast, Sean Small, kind of sent us a list of a few movies that he wouldn't mind us discussing. And one movie on that list really popped out to me because, in my opinion, it is a highly underrated movie. Next week, we're going to be discussing Blair Witch. Now, this isn't the Blair Witch Project. This isn't the original. This one is titled, again, Blair Witch, and it's actually the third film in the franchise, but it acts as a direct sequel to the original, kind of throwing the actual sequel in the garbage because of how terrible Blair Witch 2 was. Now, John, we kind of briefly discussed this. You haven't seen this movie, right?
I have not seen this film.
We'll obviously get into it way more next week, but I think there's a lot of reasons why this movie's got overlooked. Number one, because of how bad the first sequel was, and number two, because of how much time had passed since the original Blair Witch had come out. But we will get into that. I like this movie, especially the final act.
You know what? I'm very interested to see what you consider an underrated movie. I'm intrigued. I have to say, very intrigued.
So if you haven't seen this or haven't seen it in a while, hop on Netflix, watch it, and join us next week so that we can get into it and you can hear John's honest review for we finally found a movie he hasn't seen before.
Yes, yes, you have.
All right, folks. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our Facebook page, and follow us on both Twitter and Instagram at Damn Movies. We want to hear what you thought of today's podcast and any suggestions you have, especially in terms of what movies you'd like us to discuss next. Send us an email to moviesofthedamned@gmail.com. Please also check out John's full-length novels. His first two novels, Dollhouse and The Tracker, are Amazon bestsellers. You can also order his novella Balance, his book of short stories, Four Shots of Horror, and his newest novel, Off the Grid, all available right now on Amazon. For further details on John's other published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Oh yeah, thanks everyone. And on a side note, if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, why not? And secondly, if you do happen to subscribe, or even if you don't, you do you. It's cool. But leave a comment, because I'm very curious about this. Like, what is one of your scariest movies? I'm very curious about that, just to gauge what other people find really scary. But other than that, have a great week, and be kind to everyone.